Some Johannesburg residents are experiencing low water pressure, while in some areas they have no water at all coming out of the taps. In a joint statement released earlier this week, Rand Water and Johannesburg Water blamed residents for overconsumption. However, experts insist that residents cannot solely be held responsible for the current crisis and that Joburg Water's reticulation is under immense pressure. To make matters worse, the power failure at Rand Water's Zekerbosch water plant caused by the storm on Tuesday evening has resulted in the loss of 2,000 million litres per day. Water expert Anthony Turton joins us virtually from Port Shepstone in KZN to talk some more about what we're experiencing and what could really be behind it. Anthony, thank you so much for your time this evening. Let's look at it in two parts. I'm in one of the areas that was affected, and when that statement came through on the street WhatsApp group, it's either to do with electricity that we don't have water or there's some other issue. And this one said consumers are using too much water. And it left a big question mark in my head because I thought we've only really had really hot weather for a couple of weeks. Surely it cannot be the overuse of water by consumers that is led to either no water coming out of the taps or very low pressure in many areas. How did you read that statement that was sent out on Sunday?
Yes, good evening to you and the listeners. I am consistently of the opinion that we cannot blame the consumer for the plight that they find themselves in. It is simply untenable to do that. It indicates a bankruptcy of clarity of thinking, about the problem. So, I reject that out of hand. However, we are living on the edge of a number of very important precipices. One of them is this energy thing. You've just heard about the energy story. It's an ongoing saga in our life. And because we've lost our resilience, we've lost all of our different backup systems. So because we're sailing so close to the wind, if something goes wrong, then of course there's a knock-on domino effect, and that's what you're seeing happening now in South Africa with a power failure in one of the major pump stations. The numbers you mentioned there are very big numbers. Yeah. It's a substantial volume of water that has to be pumped into Johannesburg. And I also would just like to mention the fact that approximately 50% of the water that gets pumped into Johannesburg gets lost. So you're pumping water into a sieve, into a bucket with a hole in it, and that's not Rand Water's fault. That is the fault of some other entity. But it doesn't help us to point fingers of blame right now. We are really looking at a crisis, and we have to pull together to try and avert this crisis.
And the issue that happened on Tuesday night, that was really the first hint of a thunderstorm for the season that we had here in Gauteng on Tuesday, and it wasn't even a major one really compared to what is to come later on in the season, and that caused that power failure at Rand Water's Zekerbosch water plant, as you just mentioned. If a small low-level storm is causing that kind of damage, what can we expect for the coming thunderstorm season?
Yes, the whole system is under severe pressure, and in fact, I'm on the record as saying that we're seeing systemic failure. And why do I say we're seeing failure? Because the system is designed on the water side to have a 98% assurance of supply. That means that 98% of the time you have to have water. So stated simplistically, you can have 2 breakdowns in 100 years. That's what the system is designed for. And when we say breakdown, your assurance of supply is broken down into 6 components. So let me just quickly briefly tell you what those 6 components are. The assurance of supply is a guarantee of a given volume of water at a given price, at a given pressure, at a given quality, at a given time, and a given place. So if any one of those 6 elements are compromised, then you don't have your assurance of supply. And so our system has failed. Our system has failed, and we are now skirting around the outer edges of total collapse. But we're not quite in total collapse yet. So we just got to keep our.
It could have been one of our close to day zero, really hot summers or that kind of thing. And an expert at the time, it was the first time I heard them speak about how much water is lost in the Johannesburg water system because of lack of maintenance, because of the many leaks. And that was probably about a decade ago. Are you telling me that we've made very little headway in trying to fix that specific issue? Because that will be a major factor to fix that will at least help us get onto the right track.
Yes, the national number is approximately 50%. It depends on which municipality you're at. So we're losing half the water that we put into the system. And of course, that means that each person is paying twice the amount that you should be paying for the given unit of water. And I've also add another thing into the mix. We must not forget criminal activity and this kind of stuff, because right now in the Durban area, there's a localized water scarcity, and they just found out that it was because somebody shut the valves down. Oh. So in other words, people are shutting down the valves, they're sabotaging supply. Why? So that they can then get a tender for the tanker services. So there is this criminal enterprise that's infiltrated into the system, and this criminal enterprise harvest vast amount of money out of other people's discomfort. We've got to call it out for what it is, and because water belongs to everybody, we must all start policing that system as well, and we must call out these criminals when we know who they are in our communities.
There's also an element of trust here, in that if a statement is being sent out to communities, giving certain information from our water authorities, we also need to believe them. So if you and other experts are saying this isn't because of overconsumption, that also causes a deficit of trust. And people are saying, I'm not going to watch what I'm going to use because I don't believe that they're giving us the correct information, that there is actually an infrastructural issue. Should we be seeing better communication around this as well? Also in terms of differentiating between individual suburban consumers and our big manufacturing consumers, as you mentioned there about the massive economic impact that this could have.
Yes, I think that's a great point there. There is an absolute trust deficit across the country. The Eskom crisis has plunged us into this trust deficit. The COVID lockdown broke whatever trust there was. People just don't trust government. They don't trust science. They don't trust anybody anymore. So we have to start rebuilding that. And I must say this, I've actually been very encouraged lately to hear Rand Water. Rand Water's come out there quite honestly, quite openly, quite transparently, calling it the way they see it. So I think we must contextualize this thing. Rand Water can only do what Rand Water can do. It has a legal mandate and it has got legal limits. It's pumping to the full limit of its license at the moment. So it's not legally allowed to pump more than that. So that's a licensing issue, but that's not a Rand Water issue. See, so we just got to be very careful that we don't turn our anger into misdirected fingers of blame. But then the bottom line is this, and this is the take-home message, that South Africa right now is right on the brink. We cannot create new jobs. We cannot work our way out of the financial crisis that we are facing. Well, you just heard the previous reporter talking now about the Eskom thing. Who's going to fund all of that? We've got to have an economic growth and development initiative that enables the economy to generate the taxes needed to sustain all of the work we have to do to fix what's broken. So we've got to really put our focus now on water as an economic enabler, and also energy, water, energy, those two connections, and the solutions you're seeing coming out in the energy sector now, in terms of unbundling and the development of independent service providers. You're going to see exactly the same thing happening in the water sector now. There are a number of initiatives underway where you're going to start seeing independent water producers, for example, utility scale desalination plants operating in the municipal cities, feeding water into the municipal network on a long-term public-private partnership basis. So there are a lot of solutions that are very innovative out there. And, for every crisis there's a whole lot of ingenuity and innovation that comes out of that. So I know it's very inconvenient at the moment now for people, but they must have faith. We are working on this thing, and we are going to pull this wagon through the drift.
Okay, thank you so much for that update. That's water expert Anthony Turton. We thank him for his insight, joining us virtually there from Port Shepstone in KZN.